You have to live with the reality that that happened.
That heart-dropping tragedy hit Freeman High School September 13th. A shooter inside the school, killing one student and injuring 3 more. Nearly 3 months later, students and staff are pushing ahead toward healing.
You kind of have a choice between, are you going to be a victim of something that happened to you, or are you going to use it as an opportunity to try to make something positive come out of it?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jane McCarthy.
And I'm Mark Hanrahan. And Jane, you sat down with the Freeman School Superintendent, Randy Russell, for a lengthy conversation.
That's right. We made a point not so much to look back at what happened, but to look forward. He tells me nearly 3 months later, there are still some good days and some tough ones too.
Yeah, well, it depends on the day. I'm sure, as you can imagine, some days are a little better than others, but overall, the last couple weeks, I think you've seen, students and staff start to get into some of the routines that maybe they are used to at the end of September or, the beginning of October. But, certainly a lot of progress has been made, for our students and the staff and our parents. But you can also still tell that the holidays is a really tough time, for some of our kids and their families.
Obviously, with something like this, people process on a different timeline. What do you tell kids who are having a tough day?
Yeah, you keep checking in on them, daily. We're checking in on all of our students across the whole district, and we don't really ask everybody how they're doing because we know that they're not doing that great, obviously, given the situation. But what you can ask them is, what do you need and how can I help you? And that conversation can really start up finding out a little bit more about where people are, and also asking students and staff, who are you most worried about? Do you have a friend or a colleague that you're concerned about that you think we should check in? And then that's a great way to start that conversation as well, because we're finding that everybody was kind of in one place at the very beginning, and then over the last 12 weeks, on that road to recovery, everybody really now is at a completely different spot.
Right.
So how do you meet the needs of your students, your staff, the parents, where they're at on that road, to recovery. And you just need to keep asking and make sure they know resources and support are available. Yesterday morning, the unspeakable tragedy occurred at Freeman High School.
Do you think there was kind of a defining moment of healing?
I think you can look at the last 12 weeks and there's definitely some spots along, that 12 weeks which made a big difference. Having everybody come back the next day, I wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do when it was first talked about. I could tell that the leadership team in Freeman was resistant about opening our school back up the very next day after this happened. It's absolutely the best decision we made, was to have our students and their parents be able to walk through. We had created a walkway of our staff into the high school. And we had elementary students, middle school students, high school students, their parents, community members that had had kids that had graduated from Freeman 20 years ago. Freeman alumni that don't even live in the district had come out for that meeting. And I really feel like that very first day, that night, was the start of at least us trying to figure out how to work together. And that support that we received, even though it was a really tough night to have everybody come together, you could just tell how much people appreciated being together and that we could work through it. And from there on, you've seen every day, people will jump in, they'll help out, they'll work together, and the support we've received obviously is amazing.
This support has been overwhelming.
Also, that football game 2 days later.
Yeah.
I mean, we broadcast the first part of the game,
Yes,
and
yeah.
it was emotional in a great way.
It was.
Just watching the outpouring of support and the hugs and the smiles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it really wasn't even about a football game, but there's a little story behind that. Thursday night, there was some conversation at the community meeting about whether we were going to have the football game or not on Friday night, and we had talked about a community event, and I remember a couple of our senior football players came up to me and they said, Mr. Russell, we really think that tomorrow night would be a great event, you know, for our community. And they said it has nothing to do with football. And they reminded me that, you know, you guys have always said that you're going to that you guys are going to make decisions based on what's best for the kids. And we feel like this would be really helpful for our community. And our high school kids helped us make that decision.
You've been with them all along the way, and I think I can speak for the community about the fact that you were a shining star above a terrible situation, and we know your heart was with everyone.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I feel like the kids and our staff, you know, have been the shining stars, because they're the ones that have, you know, motivated us and inspired us. You know, I mean, you know, we're there to make a difference, you know, for the students, and, you know, the kids mean so much to us. You know, a lot of us have our own children, you know, that attend Freeman, and, you know, to be able to trust some of your high school students to say, this is what's best, and this is going to help us, and they were exactly right. And having that kind of trust with your students, it makes all the difference in the world.
Sitting where you are now in this experience that you've had, what would you share with other schools?
Well, just, you know, I've learned a lot of lessons, obviously, the last, you know, 12 weeks and the last 30 years, you know, in being in education. And I think, you know, for us, we've learned that, you know, we can't change yesterday. You know, we have very, very little control over tomorrow. So we're just going to do absolutely the very best we can today. And if the kids and the parents know that you're bringing 100% of what you've got that day, that message, I think, is a message of hope, and it's also a message of asking for some grace and some forgiveness, you know, that you're just not going to be perfect. And so you're going to do the very best that you can. And we've had a lot of conversations, and I think one of the biggest conversations that we've had locally is around what's happening between 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. that is happening at night away from the school, that is then landing on the doorstep of the school district or the school at 7:30 a.m. the next morning. And that's a partnership between students, the school, and your parents. And so I'm encouraging all of the parents in Freeman to know what is it that your child is doing from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., especially when it comes to social media and the communication that takes place back and forth. That is something that has changed in the last 3 years in education, that has made it so much more difficult for school administrators and staff to deal with what's happening in schools. And it's something that's not even happening at schools, but it's landing on our doorstep the next morning. And that's been a real learning lesson, I think, for all of us in education. Yeah.
What are you hoping for in 2018?
Well, I'm hoping that, you know, our next step is to get to the Christmas holiday and the break, and that, you know, we come back after the first of the year with kind of a little bit of a renewed spirit. What has happened to us has happened, and we're working through that, but we have a great opportunity as well in 2018 to turn a really difficult situation into something that could be really powerful to help people, you know, work closer together. You know, love is always going to win, you know, over hate. You know, good is always going to win over bad. You know, it's happened for, you know, generations and generations, and it's gonna happen this time too, and that's my hope.
Well, you're leading by example, that's for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else you want to add?
Just a special thank you to everybody for their support, and we really appreciate it. We really appreciate. Keep us in your thoughts and prayers, please.
Thank you, Randy Russell, for sharing your wisdom and your heart with us today.
Thank you.